Hi there. In this lecture we see a key game to help decide the winner of the 1873 Vienna tournament. It's one of the playoff games between Joseph Henry Blackburne and Wilhelm Steinitz. So they both won 10 matches each in the main tournament. Blackburne had lost the match against Rosenthal. If he hadn't lost against Rosenthal, he beat Steinitz in their match. So that's why they ended up with 10 victories each. So overall, though, Steinitz's play was more solid, as in not so losing. He didn't lose so many games in the process of winning the matches as Blackburne did. So could that fact be evident in this game? Is Joseph Henry Blackburne an all-or-nothing player, while Steinitz is more playing not to lose? Kind of positional play can be considered as playing not to lose in a way, just playing more accurately, not all-or-nothing style of chess, where you take a lot of risks. It's trying to play the position more in a less risky manner. So we see e4 from Blackburne. So not the most positional opening. It's classic e4 with Ruy López though. So okay, no flashy gambit though, like the King's Gambit. So it is solid play. Queen e2, b5, bishop b3, bishop b7, d3, bishop c5. It's solid play so far. We could say c3, black castles, bishop g5, h6, and now bishop h4. So here the bishop drops back. We really don't want to play g5 here when white hasn't even castled, because h4 and then knight h2 and then following up with f3 is not going to be nice for us. Our structure is damaged, our king side is less safe. We don't want to do that. White does have an edge there. So bishop e7 is better. Nothing wild. Knight bd2, king h8, knight f1. So this is interesting. Instead of just routinely castling, perhaps this isn't evidence of the all or nothing style. Before castling, knight uses f1. Okay, a4. B takes, bishop takes a4. Note how this bishop could, in theory, try and prevent the white king castling. If you think about the Evans Gambit in reverse, often in the Evans Gambit there's a bishop on a3 trying to cut across. So here it's like black's playing, if d takes, bishop a6, we can see that the king could be stopped from castling. And in fact, black now ventures a very aggressive move indeed, because this does look slow instead of castling. Guess what Steinitz plays here, which tries to exploit, the king hasn't castled yet, is in the center. What would you play for 10 points? It's actually d5, and it looks as though, well, d5, hold on. Why can't white win a pawn? Queen c2 is played. If white tries bishop takes c6 to win a pawn, there's bishop b5 here with the big threat of d takes e4. This light square bishop without the counterpart is very dangerous. This position, knight takes d5, c4, is getting to be even worse. Bishop b4 check, queen takes h4, and black's winning here. Okay, so queen c2 is played. We have d takes e4. You can see that this diagonal, which could prevent the white king castling, could be useful to black soon. We see knight d7, which hits the bishop on h4. The bishop moves to g3, which is a mistake. Now, if white wanted the philosophy of not losing as a very high priority, then bishop takes e7 facilitates being able to castle quickly after knight g3 in particular, with castling on the way. And you might say, well, hold on, can't we just play bishop a6? If we play bishop a6, we drop the c6 knight, and there's no major compensation here for dropping the c6 knight. That's the thing. If we try knight c5 here, hitting the bishop on a4, white can castle and not worry too much about losing the bishop. The king's safe. It's about even. So yes, bishop takes e7 does seem like a good idea, but we see instead bishop g3, and now things are slightly different. Knight c5 is played. Okay. Rook d1, which hits the queen. If knight e3, bishop a6 is actually possible here. This is quite different, because if bishop takes c6, we have knight d3 check, and that's quite vicious. If the king went to f1 or e2, there's knight b4 check picking up the queen. And also if king d2, knight b4 check picks up the queen. So yeah, that would be quite vicious. Bishop a6 is possible here. So rook d1 is tried. We have queen e8, which now protects the knight. We have knight e3, another inaccuracy. Bishop b5, it seems, might have had to be played, although black is better now after knight b4. Yeah, the tactics with the king in the center, they're not very pleasant. So this hits the bishop and hits the queen. If c takes, queen takes b5. And this position, with the king still in the center, is not good news. This position gets pretty complicated, but we have here, even when white castles, we have the idea of bishop a6 taking on f1, and white has to play with extreme precision just to stay on the board. If queen takes f1, we would take on e5, and we're better here with the black pieces. We go to this endgame, which is actually better for black. And if white has to play with precision, it would be rook d4 and rook f4. And here rook takes f7 would be the most accurate. Not queen takes f1, because queen takes e3 check and rook takes e5 leaves black with the advantage again, but rook takes f7 kind of holds the balance. So bishop takes would be one of the better moves. Rook takes e5 here, knight takes, queen f5, and it ends up being an even position. It's funny stuff. It really is funny stuff. White has to play with extreme accuracy basically with bishop b5. But white played knight e3 and now bishop a6, so this is a totally ideal position where black succeeded in stopping white castling. Now knight d5 makes things even worse. Knight takes e5 had to be played, which seems to exploit this pinned knight, but here the tactic knight b4 is strong, so hitting the queen and also looking at the bishop. So if c takes, knight takes a4. And if f3, a takes b4, black's got a big advantage there. If c4 here, then knight b4, bishop takes, knight takes c2 check. And actually here, we're doing very well in this position with the black pieces. Even, when the queens come off and we've got all of this piece pressure, black's doing actually pretty well here. If we take it further and further, this end game is a nice endgame for black. So anyway, knight d5 though makes things significantly worse for white. So basically, c4 was, if white plays very accurately with c4, it's still bad. But this is even worse. So we have now bishop d6. So with the white king stranded in the center, knight h4 is played. Rook b8. So white is playing basically without a rook. This is a risky, thing. Knight f6, hoping for g takes f6. So this is quite pragmatic now. That actually, black is better, and can we not just play simple moves rather than more complex moves? So what would you play here, which is a kind of simple but effective move for 10 points? Yeah, if we're not greedy and just play queen e6 and, just let bishop takes might happen for queen takes, and we haven't damaged our structure, and the white king still stranded in the center, we're better there. If we were super greedy with g takes, Blackburne's concept presumably here is queen c1, and it does get pretty scary that white wants to play queen takes h6 and knight f5. Why would we want to indulge this? It turns out with accurate play we might be able to be okay with rook takes b2. This is just for the record. So queen takes h6, let's take this line. We're threatened with mate just in time, knight e6. But now bishop h4 and the fun continues for white, threatening bishop takes f6. It's scary stuff, and it turns out bishop c5 might be a saving resource to rook d3. The only move for black here is bishop takes f2 to survive this. If we played bishop takes d3, bishop takes f6, bishop takes f2 check, king d1 check, king c1, and here, okay, bishop takes c6, and the funny thing is, with this, white is winning the queen back here with interest after check and knight takes c6. There's a big black box of mystery which we don't really need to indulge at all, because simple moves are sometimes really effective. We can just bypass all of this like contraption, ingenious contraption set for doubling the pawns with just queen e6. I can run that through just for fun with you again, just for fun. If queen takes b2 had been played here, then we would have just played knight takes a4, and here knight e7, and black's ready for things. This position, in fact, knight g6, knight takes, queen takes c3 check. With the king in the center, queen c1 check is now useful. Bishop b4 is checkmate. Yeah, it's useful that the king's in the center. And if the queen had dropped back, then we would just take and then take on g6. So there's a will for variations, sure, but it's variations we don't need to indulge. We should really consider this seriously, that look, even if it's just a small advantage, I mean, this is the philosophy of Anatoly Karpov. You know, he prefer a microscopic advantage to something which is unclear. If something's unclear, we risk losing. It's like one of the primary ideas of positional chess is actually not to lose. So that's why the games can be more drawn out. They can be more like accurate from an engine perspective, because we're not trying to sacrifice everything to win quickly or something. And yeah, queen e6 is just clearer from a human perspective. You know, the complications here are huge. So yeah, it turns out, I mean, if we didn't have bishop c5 and then bishop takes f2, and just following this through, yeah, bishop takes f2, bishop takes d3, bishop h4, rook e2 check, king d1, there's queen b8. White doesn't manage to land a knockout punch just yet, and the king's in the center here. Say the queen goes back, yeah, the white king in the center, we're winning here. If the queen doesn't go back, then we get the first shot with queen b1 check, taking the queens off, and we've got a winning position here. Yeah, we're threatening rook b1 checkmate, so it's all just end of game in any case. So yeah, a massive variations, but all bypassed by this just simple and effective move, queen e6. So we have bishop takes c6, queen takes f6. So the facts of the case, the facts of the position remain that the king, factually, is stranded in the center. This rook is not in the game. This knight's offside. Black's pieces are all pretty good. We have f3, which weakens dark squares. If c4, we can play rook b4 here. This is quite nasty. And even if white castles, bishop takes c4, we're hitting the rook and we're threatening bishop b3. So here, bishop b3 actually winning in exchange would be a winning position. So f3 is tried. Rook b6 hitting the bishop. Now doubling. It's a beautiful position to have. The rooks are working well together. White's rooks, this one's still in bed. This knight's not great. So we have b3, knight takes b3, knight f5. Knight returns back, which means now the rooks can start making use of b2 as a pivot square. c4, rook b2. We have knight takes d6, black just takes on d6, again avoiding complexity, avoiding any black box, which really doesn't exist here. We could have just taken the queen. It doesn't really matter about knight takes f7, we're just clearly better here. But avoiding any black box of mystery, any unclear black box, c takes d6 just leaves white with a completely lost position, because on queen c3, guess what we have here? It's like the king's in the center and we've got different directions to hit the king with. which kind of join up here. So we have rook 8 to b3, offering a5 with a5. The queen hasn't got many squares to go. I mean, c1, okay. But we have now rook e3 check, which means the queen will now be aligned to the white king. And guess what Steinitz plays here for 10 points? Yeah, just rook takes f3 check. There's no way that the pawn could take on f3. Queen takes f3 check. We have the king to ourselves. That's mate. Or here, queen e2, checkmate. So we have king g3. But now, guess what wins in this position in a crushing manner? Black to play for 10 points. What would you play? Forcing move, basically rook takes g3, weakens f2, threatens this mate or this way, that mate is another way. So rook f1, and now this is checkmate. Yeah. Or if h takes had been played, queen f2 check. Okay, there's king h2, but then queen takes g2 is checkmate. So yes, that was quite the crush, and it shows this contrast that sometimes we want to play just not to lose, and as part of that, just avoid the opponent's big black boxes of mystery. Just play simple moves which are much clearer and steadier, and that's what Steinitz seemed to do in this game. But he also, to be fair, seemed to get such a nice position. It resembles an Evans gambit in reverse at one point, in my view, how the king has been stopped with bishop a6. So the whole d5, d takes e4, stripped open that key kind of attacking diagonal. This gets to be a dream position, basically, when we have this bishop on a6. Dreamy position with the black pieces. Wonderful stuff. I hope you enjoyed this as much as me. Thanks so much. All comments, questions, likes and subscribes, really appreciated. Thanks so much.